Again, I'm Corey Herman. I'm from I grew up in North Dakota. I'm a resident of North Dakota, and I'm the GFR for Rural Utility Service for North and South Dakota. I did live in Pierre for a while, spent some time in Huron, and on the Lower Rural Indian Reservation for a bit. So I am very familiar with North and South Dakota. I was talking to a guy last week, and he mentioned that he grew up on the end of a dirt road, and I started thinking, I go, me too. I'm from a small town of 120, end of a road, and there's a big coulee on the edge of town, so I guess I grew up on the end of a dirt road as well. It was 30 miles to the closest rural hospital and 70 miles to Bismarck. So this has been real refreshing for me to see all the behind the scenes details of what is involved in the struggles and the issues of a rural hospital are. So start off by saying thank you. I have memories of stitches and running 30-40 miles just to get stitches, and or I have two 2-year-olds. Tomorrow I'll have a 2 and a 3-year-old, and we drove 70 miles to the birth plan included 70 miles, an hour and 15 minutes to the hospital. So I appreciate what you guys do. Again, I got 20 minutes. I got about 18 slides. The intent is I'm going to skip by a lot of stuff. I want to get a lot of information out there, and then hopefully just kind of spur thought and ideas and basically make myself available. I've been in this position for 8 months. It's been a lot of travel. I think I've been home maybe 4 days in 3 months. I leave on Monday, get home on Friday. So if I haven't met you yet, hopefully try to make yourself available and take a few minutes, and hopefully we can get to know each other. Like I said, I have a lot of slides. I'm just going to touch through a bunch of them. I work for a rural utility service, which is under USDA, which is under rural development. And originally it was started in the 30s to bring rural electric power and rural telephone to rural America. In the last few years, it's been broadband. A lot of the work has been broadband internet, fiber to the home in rural America, and the distance learning telemedicine grants. Some of the different programs that are available is the Telecommunication Infrastructure Loan Program. It's to improve and build telecommunication service in rural communities less than 5,000 people. That's fiber to the home, broadband internet, to your rural telephone cooperatives are the main beneficiaries of that. Distance Learning Telemedicine Loan and Grant Program, which is probably the most important to this audience. Loans and grants for providing distance learning and telemedicine services to rural residents and anchor institutions. Just a show of hands, how many people have been involved with a distance learning telemedicine grant or loan? Great. Community Connect grant programs, those are grants for broadband service providers and others who offer broadband services in rural and remote areas. Basically, a lot of that is your remote areas and get grants for putting fiber to rural communities, including rural hospitals. Part of that grant process has, they get points for basically, providing broadband fiber to hospitals, schools, community centers, and basically making internet available in rural communities. Rural Broadband Loan Program, which is under the Farm Bill, and then public TV grants. The current Rural Development Telecom Program portfolio is $4.6 billion. Also $2.5 billion in grant funds. So as you can see, there's a pretty good sized program out there, and it's very active. North and South Dakota is very active in all of those programs we've discussed so far. So that's great to see growing up in the Dakotas. As you can see, this is the 2014 and 2015 budgets for the programs I described earlier. The telephone infrastructure loan budget for 14 was $690 million, and 15 is $690 million. So you can see it's pretty consistent. Broadband loans is 34.5, and it went up to 75.7 last year. Distance learning telemedicine grants was 19.3 last year, and this year it's 19 million in grants that are available again. Community Connect grants this year was 10.4 million. That grant window is closed and are currently reviewed, and hopefully within a month or two they announce who the awardees for those grants are. And then $2 million for public television grants. Again, I'm kind of going fast. I got 20 minutes and a fair amount of slides, so I'm just trying to get the information out there. Please keep in mind I'll be here all day, and it's kind of a general forum this afternoon, so by all means, if there's something I can elaborate on, you can raise your hand, we can talk about it now, and or hold it for the general discussion. We can talk about it then. The DLT grants are not just a way to obtain educational technology or medical equipment. The focus is on using the capabilities of telecommunications to connect rural areas to each other and to the world, thus overcoming the effects of remoteness and low population density. Our focus is to bring, all the technology you have in the big cities into rural America and make, everything available. Distance learning means a curriculum delivered via telecommunications and stresses the connection of students and teachers to remote sites. Telemedicine means the delivery of health care from medical professions at one site and patients at other sites via telecommunications. Telemedicine shows benefit to rural residents either in reduced travel or improved access to service. Distance learning, video conferencing is probably the most common that you see under the grants for distance learning. It includes bridges, servers, cameras, projectors. Telemedicine, teleradiology, teledentistry, telepsychiatry, pharmacy, and virtual ICU. Projects can be a combination of distance learning and telemedicine, basically medical education and service. Who's eligible? A lot of entities are eligible for the grants. Corporations, partnerships, tribal nations, state, local governments, nonprofit, for-profit organizations. Basically, the only exclusion is no individuals or sole proprietorships. The function operate a rural community facility to deliver DLT services to entities that operate a rural community facility or to residents of a rural area at rates calculated to ensure the benefit of the financial assistance. What is eligible for the grant process? Audio-video equipment, computer hardware, software, network components, terminal equipment, data terminal equipment, warranties, inside wiring. There's a lot of options. A lot of things are available for the grant. So if any of the things we discussed are of interest to you or you're wondering how you can get them funded, by all means bring them up this afternoon. Things that the grants funds cannot be used to purchase: salaries, benefits, administrative expenses, i.e. overhead, recurring costs, medical equipment, or equipment owned by it says CLEX or LEC. Basically your telephone cooperative, it can't cover their equipment to provide you the service, but we actually, the broadband loan program actually provides and assists with that portion of it. So no duplication of facilities, and a key point there is costs incurred before the application deadline. So if you want to cover something under the grant, you don't want to buy it before you apply for it, because then it wouldn't be covered. It's something that has to be bought after you apply for the grant. DLT grant scoring. I know there's some grant writers in the audience, so I thought I'd just touch on the scoring. Scoring is based on 230 points, 8 categories. Rurality, how rural you are. National School Lunch Program has a point. Matching funds, leveraging, which is probably a key thing to discuss this afternoon. How can we use this program with the others at a rural development and or your state office? How can we, synergetically use all these funds and improve on the infrastructure? I won't read them to you. The innovativeness, cost effectiveness. And then last year and this current year, they actually have a special consideration. I've had a fair amount of questions on this. The projects that contain at least one end user site within a trust area or a tribal jurisdiction will gain 15 extra points. So if you are a grant writer, you plan to put in for a grant, this is a key piece of information. So what is a special consideration? The applicant can document with a map that the end user site is within a boundary of a trust area or a tribal area, with a map identifying the geographical coordinates and physical address of the end user, and with some form of legal reference or written evidence that the area is trust area or justification. So basically, I don't know if you want to write those down, but those three are requirements to get that special consideration. You got to prove, with a map, GPS coordinates, that your end user is in one of these trust or tribal areas. The 65 awards were received in fiscal year 14, of which 29 had received special consideration points. So just less than 50%, that got the grant, and it is a competitive process, were used the special consideration points. Listserv, is there anybody that's on the U.S. Rural Utility Service listserv in D.C.? No. This listserv, if you Google USDA distance learning telemedicine, this page should come up. And if you look where the arrow is, you can click on that, and we have listserv. So when the NOFA, Notice of Funds Available, and the notices come out, you'll get an email that says, hey, the grant window is open, you can apply, and here's the deadline. So if you want these emails sent to you, I'll be here all afternoon. I'll leave some business cards on the table. Feel free to grab them. Feel free to call me with any questions in reference to the opening windows and that kind of thing. I just wanted to note where you can sign up for the listserv and make that available. There is, I was actually supposed to, I think right now there's a tentative webinar I'm supposed to be attending. It's the dry run today, but there is 2 webinars that are going to be June 4th and 10th from 1 to 3, and it's going to cover the existing grant that is open right now. So if you are interested in putting in for a grant, I'd highly recommend you attend one of these webinars. And again, it's June 4th and June 10th. I don't know, it's probably, can you guys see the web address or the email address is on there? If you Google Distance Learning Telemedicine Grant Program, you should be able to get this web page. If not, just hit me up this afternoon and we'll get you the information. So that's my last slide. I went 100 miles an hour because I wanted to cover about 15 minutes and leave about 5 minutes for questions. Again, I'm Corey Herman, the General Field Rep for RUS. The current Distance Learning Telemedicine Grant is out. It came out on May 22nd. I have a timeline for the existing grant. I wanted to cover that since this is new, and it does have a deadline. Again, June 4th is the first webinar to cover the existing grant application. June 10th is the other and final webinar. The window for the DOT applications for 2015 closes on July 6th. So if you are putting in an application, that is the deadline, July 6th. Once they're scored, they're hoping, with the goal is to have the awards recommended to the administrator middle of September. So hopefully the awards will be announced in October. With that 100-mile-an-hour presentation is the end of it. So I wanted to leave a few minutes at the end to talk about answer any questions with the DLT program, the open window, the webinars. Now is the time to apply for them. Like I said, July 6th is the deadline. So, and it's grant dollars. It's not a loan. It's, it doesn't have to be paid back. So if you are interested, by all means, ask questions now, talk about it this afternoon. That concludes my presentation. Any questions?